Welcome in, Loons fans, to another edition of the Matchday Preview. Jonathan Harrison here. Pleased you've joined us today for this edition. Manny, usually I start off with pleasantries, welcoming you back in from a vacation, but I got to start off with one pressing question I know Loons fans everywhere want to know. When are we going to revive the Minnesota United New York Cosmos rivalry and have you and Gio as the head coaches of both of these teams?
There you go. Let's breaking news. We have to probably Open Cup is when we have to do it, right? That's the only way
Yes.
we could have a cross game. Maybe the second team could play against them. I don't know, but pretty cool story. Obviously, that is an amazing brand. I get chills when I think about that brand because I was a kid watching Kicks Cosmos games here in Minnesota. But I like it. I like the little throwback. And by the way, I think there's some news. I don't know if we can talk about it in the show, but I think there are some things coming in the next month or so about a third kit and
Yeah.
some type of stuff. I don't even know what we can. Maybe you can talk about it because I don't know what the rules
Well,
are.
there's reporting. I haven't
Yeah.
seen anything, so there's nothing I can really divulge. There's reporting. I know Andy Greeter's reported on it that I mean, it's already been out there that a third kit's coming. What it looks like, who knows? There's been leaks online of what it may or may not look like. The third kit is reportedly going to be shown against LAFC. That's reporting, so we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. If those leaks are true, though, man, that is exciting to see, and looking forward to it. Let's jump into it.
By the way, I may or may not be excited about this potentially amazing third kit rumor being real and true. So I'll leave it at that.
There's only so much we can say about something like
Correct.
that. So
Yeah.
let's jump into it. Plenty to discuss. Let's start off with the scary stuff. Scary head injury by Stephen Fry. They had to end the game early. Columbus, Seattle 1-1 draw there. You never like to see something like that, but good to see that Stephen Fry is all good. Posting on Twitter a day later that everything's fine. Glad that he is all good after what looked like a very scary incident there at the end of that match, Manny.
Yeah, no, I mean, just it sounds to me like the leadership group, particularly the two head coaches, were very much on top of a very challenging situation. 1-1, a lot of drama, a lot of points on the line. And I think you have two leaders of two organizations that just have an ability in class to kind of rise above, the kind of stress and drama of the moment to make sure they're kind of thinking about deciding things the right way.
Yeah, well handled by the leadership crew there in Seattle and Columbus in that one. Elsewhere across the Western Conference in Major League Soccer over the last week or so, Houston shocking San Diego, a 4-3 win there. Best game Houston's probably played all year. This is a bit of a shock result because San Diego have been flying really high this season at the top of the West, but that loss combined with the Vancouver loss and the Minnesota win brings the Loons back within 2 points of the top of the Western Conference, right when it seemed like there might have been a little bit of a gap forming. All of a sudden, Loons right back in the thick of it, Manny.
Yeah, it's fun. We have actually had the show for we took a week off, and I just exciting how well we've played and the points have gone our way. And I'm really excited for this next stretch because it feels like we're right in the thick of talking about the Western Conference. And I know it's a little bit early, but midway through, there's no doubt we're one of the better teams, I think, in the West for sure now. And just going back to San Diego, I still think San Diego and Vancouver, like us, have to get better if they want to win the West. And
Mhm.
it's hard. And as good as San Diego's been and Vancouver's been, they have a little blip. And credit to Houston, though. I thought there was moments in the Houston game where I didn't think they played well after we scored. But there was moments early on where you saw some structure what Ben Olsen's trying to do, and they seem like they're trying to get that balance of offense and defense. And that game, I think, really surprised San Diego how well they attacked and really kind of made San Diego feel uneasy the whole game. It was a really good result for them.
Speaking of Vancouver, we talked about the potential for a post CONCACAF Champions Cup final dip from them. Well, that's certainly been the case in league play, 3 losses in their last 4 matches. Now, granted, a lot of that has to be said. There's a big caveat that a lot of their roster was missing for the Gold Cup over the last month. So how much of what we saw in June from Vancouver is just the fact that they're missing so many players, and how much is the fact that the post CONCACAF Champions Cup run, that dip might be real for MLS clubs.
Well, I think it's real just in the fact that it's so hard to stay consistent over the entire year, given the adversity of different things. And you're right, they kind of had a double dip. They had the CONCACAF kind of blowout loss in the championship game where they put a lot of energy into trying to win that tournament. And then you have the Gold Cup where, to me, it was interesting that our players were available in Dallas, whereas the Vancouver national team players, Canadian national team players, were not available for their game over last weekend. So I think for me, I want to give another couple of weeks to see how they respond to the adversity now that they have everybody back and see if they can kind of, show that they are the top of the West still. But it's going to be tough. Like I said, I think, there are some teams in the West now starting to play really, really well and do really, really well. So it's exciting.
So we talk about the Gold Cup, and let's
Yeah.
get to that final now. Mexico beating the U.S. men's national team. Your thoughts? I guess we'll start with the final, then we'll kind of go broad spectrum on the Gold Cup overall for the U.S. But your thoughts on the final and what you saw from the U.S. in that game against Mexico?
Yeah, I think it's a tough anytime you're playing a final against Mexico. I think they probably had on paper a little bit higher quality of their A team roster
Mhm.
versus us. I think it was probably our kind of B minus ist team. So I'm fine with it. I thought to me it was a good Gold Cup because there was a lot of stress and drama building up to the both the roster of the Gold Cup, which we debated here, and then the preparation, and especially that 4-0 loss to Switzerland and disappointment, and then the guys coming together, and battling to get to the final. And you had some nice moments of the grit and fight that I think the group that whatever the group's going to be in a year from now needs. I thought there was some really good debate about style. I thought there was some good debate about what type of players need to be on this roster in 12 months. So I'm coming out of it really positive. I'm always disappointed if we're going to lose to Mexico and or Canada now, which frankly I think has pushed themselves into that CONCACAF discussion. But I also understand that this was kind of a mishmash group for us to try to get a win against Mexico.
Yeah, I like going up as early as they did, but then you saw how much they kind of just retreated and sat back, and Mexico just kind of felt like they took over that match after the U.S. men's national team scored their early goal off Chris Richards, and it really felt like Mexico were just they had more quality on the field as you said, uh, from all the way up and down the field. So you could see that the U.S. men's national team were struggling at times in that match, but holding on and keeping Mexico close despite not having your A squad or maybe even your B squad. Who on this squad for the U.S. men's national team, from what you saw at the Gold Cup, has played themselves into the World Cup roster? I think for me, there's three guys who played themselves onto the roster and maybe two guys who've played themselves into potential starting roles. Those two guys, Malik Tillman and Matt Freese. I think Freese is taking over the number one goalkeeping job. And I think Malik Tillman, from what we saw from him during the entirety of the Gold Cup, I think he deserves to be on the starting roster, no matter who else is with him, because he was just so dynamic. He was exceptional for me throughout the entire month.
Yeah, I've got a couple layers of kind of like where I thought the Gold Cup provided some excitement for both the current and future part of the national team. Um, I differ a little bit. I think there's two potential because again, in 12 months, anything can happen. Levels. I think if you're talking about excitement of the Gold Cup, I think two players peaked into like potentially being really part of that starting 11, which got me really excited. For me, the top one is Chris Richards. I thought he was a leader. I thought he was outstanding. I've gotten really excited because that's one of those the positions in the field where I'm a little bit nervous versus the rest of the field. I'm not going to go there with the goalie. I thought Freeze had a good tournament, particularly in shootouts. I didn't see enough to say like, oh, he should be our starter. I think it's still a huge red flag issue for going into the World Cup about how we can elevate how we play and how we look. I thought he had a good tournament. Did I think he had a great tournament? No, I didn't. I think good and great PKs. And I think you're right with Tillman. I think Tillman and Richards are the two for me that presented themselves in a way that I got excited about. Just that we have maybe two starters that I didn't see before that now really kind of evolve an exciting roster. If you think about McKennie, you think about Pulisic and Balogun and Wea, you think about Dest and um, uh, Jedi, just like we are looking, I think, very solid about most of the positions in the field. Like I said, to compete against those top five or six last teams in the world, like the France's, Spain, and Brazil's, I'm a little bit nervous still, but I feel much better about where we are heading into next year, ironically, than maybe a lot of people do. And then I think that secondary phase where you get excited about the future. I think a lot of people on paper love Luna's kind of grit and attitude. I thought it was
Mhm.
fun. I do think you're right. I think it's a nice reminder that it doesn't matter where you come from, who you are. You step on that field, you represent the crest, and you fight for it. And I hope some of the European guys that missed out on the Gold Cup, get excited about that aspect of when they come back now for this preparation for the World Cup in 12 months. And I really liked Freeman. I didn't think he had a great tournament, but I am really excited about his athleticism and just
Mhm.
kind of dealing with athletic players at a high level. Really gets me excited for the future in that right back position.
His size is something that you don't see at the right back position normally. A guy who's 6'2", he's that big. He's got that kind of speed and athleticism. You don't normally see that out of your wingbacks, and that's fun to see him kind of develop and blossom into this U.S. men's national team player. I guess leaving Chris Richards out, I always just kind of assume he's already in the starting roster.
Oh, I
Uh,
didn't have that. I was a little nervous about it, to be honest. So I
really,
still thought even though he had a great year at Crystal Palace and did some stuff, he really struggled in a back four. He didn't really pop at Crystal Palace. They went to back three. So sometimes you could argue that helps any player who now is going to be asked to play in a back four. And he didn't. I think he struggled in a back four for a while. So I was blown away about his level personally. So I did not have him as starter um, going into this Gold Cup actually. So
how do you feel about Pochettino as the head coach of this team, having to find different pieces than you would normally think you're coming into being the U.S. men's national team head coach? You come in thinking, I've got Pulisic, I've got Weah, I've got McKennie, and he didn't have any of those guys this time around for this tournament. How do you think he did adjusting to the roster that he had in front of him and figuring out how those pieces work together throughout the tournament?
well, I think he did well in that he let the national team group know that nobody individually is bigger than the group. So I think he came out of it getting ready for the next 12 months. Again, if this happened 3 months before the World Cup and the tension between Pulisic and Pochettino was there, I'd be very concerned about where the group is going in terms of developing the right kind of culture and values to kind of get ready for the World Cup in 12 months on home soil. But I feel really good in that the two of them specifically about their tension, I think that's going to get sorted out by next year. Partly because I think Pochettino did a really good job of trying to let people know I'm just going to play who wants to play for this country and play for the shirt. Um, and then I think there was some nice growth that the reality is our level and depth is not maybe as big as some of the top teams in the world or even that he's used to in Argentina. But again, glass half full, our depth is through the roof compared to Mexico right now. So we no, it's true. Like
No,
we have
yeah.
to find ourselves. There's a lot of good things going on in this country, and there's a lot of things that are building for the future. It maybe hasn't come in as fast as we want, and it's just the reality is the Spains and Frances of the world are just so far in front, and they've reinvented how they're going to get better that it's a little bit sometimes just deflating to see that we still have so long to go as a country to really consider ourselves a really huge soccer developing nation of players.
Yeah, it's still be very interesting to watch how this team develops over the next couple months into the World Cup. And considering there's not really any real competitive games coming up, they'll have some friendlies for sure, but nothing that matches the competitiveness of the Gold Cup or even the World Cup coming up here in a
Yeah,
couple
and
months'
again,
time.
I'm complacent. I just want to make sure, Jonathan, it's never okay to lose to Mexico on home soil. It's
Right.
not. But I would say I'm okay with the guys having a great run, and then coming up short. But as long as they leave the field being like, we won't let that happen again.
Yeah, for sure. Elsewhere across world soccer, before we jump into the review portion of this podcast, Chelsea beat Fluminense 2-0 in the semifinals of the Club World Cup. And then PSG just hammer Real Madrid 4-0 in PSG's continued tromp towards world greatness. Their final comes up on Sunday, I believe. Chelsea versus PSG in the final of that one. I'm taking PSG with this one. It's not even close for me, Manny.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chelsea has a better chance of competing against PSG than Real Madrid, ironically, just because they're a little bit more athletic and they're a little bit more I think, maybe able to kind of deal with just the tempo and rhythm that PSG plays. Where Madrid will get opened up. They've got some guys that aren't maybe as excited about two-way defending. I think Chelsea will be a little bit more kind of like, will be easier to deal with PSG's tempo based on the fact that they play in the Premier League and they have a lot of young, hungry guys that want to run. But you're right. I do think we talked about the Club World Cup. I think overall, the South American teams ended with Fluminense. That was a great run. I think obviously the player who they just signed scored both goals against Fluminense, which I think is an amazing storyline. But it's really about PSG. I mean, ultimately, like it's hard to not see them winning this tournament. Where I get excited, and I actually had a conversation with somebody today on the way up to Blaine in the car, is PSG is playing the type of soccer that I believe is the pinnacle of soccer in the world right now, where it's shifted from this kind of possession based to this like vertical tempo where they do slow it down. But when they go, they expose the gaps, they find the passing lanes, they create triangles, they get forward, and then they press the heck out of you. Like they really are, a balanced team of players that are committed to a style and identity. And it was amazing. I'm a Real Madrid fan, and they are taken aback in that the game used to be kind of one or two stars could really dictate how a game would go. I think PSG is really changing the dynamics of potentially less superstars in soccer and
Mhm.
more kind of superstar teams who play a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, I saw online there was a reel of like the presses that PSG had against Real Madrid and how it just completely just unsettled Real Madrid time and time again throughout that match. And it was incredible to watch these guys who are on massive contracts buy in wholeheartedly to this system of completely pressing the heck out of your opponents and really throwing them for a loop and getting goals off of that high press. It was really fun to watch that
It
match.
was,
And
by the way, I think Miami and Seattle played better against PSG than Real Madrid did. I
oh
thought Real
yeah,
Madrid they couldn't get the ball, they couldn't move it, they couldn't figure out how to defend and just repress and win the ball back. Again, I think Real Madrid has a lot of issues about their own identity. And like I said, they've always kind of been this superstar team. And I'm really intrigued by looking at how Barcelona kind of got back to like the pinnacle of soccer in Spain and Europe, based a little bit more on that team kind of identity that PSG has. So it was a really cool tournament. I mean, it's going to be a great final. I wouldn't count Chelsea out though. Like I said, the great thing about this sport is the moment PSG thinks it's going to be easy or easy things are going to
right.
happen, I think they might have a young, hungry team in Chelsea that is starting to want to show that they've had a couple decades of great soccer in the world game.
Yeah, it'll be a really fun final to watch and two different teams there. Looking forward to that one. Let's jump into this the review portion of the podcast. Minnesota United, FC Dallas at the weekend. This was a fun one, Manny. I'll get your thoughts broadly on it before we talk about the tactics because there's an interesting shift that we saw on the field that I want to ask you about. But your overall thoughts on the win for Minnesota United against FC Dallas at the weekend?
Yeah, it was I mean, I thought it was a great away game by us. Really, the first half. I think it was one of the best first halves we've had all year, whether at home or on the road. Um, Part of that is I think it reminded me of the Kansas City game we got up 3-0, where just our quality of play and our balance of offense and defense and moving the ball and not really letting Dallas get any type of rhythm. I felt like that game could have been 2 or 3-0 at halftime based on how we played, and it was fun because again, I think there's games where we've looked great defensively on the road and we're like, well, they haven't had a chance, but it's not like we're going forward or allowing ourselves moments to kind of press and repress higher up the field. And I thought this was one of those games where I think it gets me excited about this second half of the year because it shows that the team can evolve in where we are now to be something where I think we could be one of the better teams in the league based on how we defend and attack and counterattack. And then I'll maybe throw a team for a loop. Like, I don't think Dallas was ready for us to press that high and repress at times where they really had no ideas about how to move the ball and break our lines.
Yeah, for sure. And you look at how Minnesota set up, and this is the question I want to ask you. We saw the return of Tani Oluwaseyi and Kelvin Yeboah at the same time on the field, but there was a little bit of a twist. Tani Oluwaseyi dropping a little bit deeper, allowing space for Kelvin Yeboah to run into. Got Tani into some space as well that we hadn't seen those guys. And I think from when we've seen these guys on the field, and I said this to Dan on the broadcast, when we've seen these guys on the same field at the same time, that felt like the most cohesive we've seen those two. It didn't feel like at times, it didn't seem like at times that we were seeing those guys make the same runs in the same area that we've seen earlier on in this season. They both kind of felt like it looked like to me at least that they knew where each other was going to be, and Tanny dropping deeper allowed Kelvin more space than we've seen those two operate with when they've been on the field at the same time this season.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of selfless running on both parts, about excited about accentuating both their qualities. Particularly, you mentioned the offensive patterns. I thought it was one of our best games, really more the first half. I would have preferred
Yeah.
us not to allow that goal. I think that game would have gone on to been a 3 or 4-0 game if we'd not given up the goal to now make the second half stressful. But that first half really showed where I think we can go as a team in this second half of the season, partly because those two are committed to maybe elevating their strengths and weaknesses. And again, I still would flip it again to like, I still think it's really how we press when they're in the game. And by the way, pressing doesn't have to be high up the field. Pressing can be when you have that low block and you're deep, and how do you press and squeeze to get your team up to higher up the field? And again, I thought the two of them really committed to work together on that. And to your point, I don't know if we've always seen when they play together that kind of commitment on both sides of the ball to both create the space offensively or to really close down the space defensively.
Yeah, it was really fun to see that little development from them in the attack. Carlos Harvey scoring in the 35th minute, and then Anthony Marcanic scoring for, I think, or maybe not him specifically, but I think for the third game in a row at the time, the Loons scoring off a long throw in. They can't. There was an article in the Guardian this week that called Minnesota
Yeah.
the most aggressive set piece team in the world, and that's fun. That was fun to read. That was a really insightful read over on the Guardian. If you haven't read that, go read it. It's an incredible deep dive into the tactics of the set pieces by Minnesota United and Eric Ramsey over the last year and a half. But Anthony Marcanic just keeps finding a way to be on the far post where no one's around him and just tapping in header after header after a long throw and a head on from the near post. Loons can't keep getting away with it, can they?
Well, I'll start with I think the Dallas game was interesting for me because I thought we could have had 2 or 3 goals from run and play because we really kind of cut them open, but we still scored in our go-to way with the set pieces. But
Mm-hmm.
when you create your own luck, you create your own moments, and I think the pressure of set pieces, and really I was surprised, if I'm being honest, how poor Dallas was at set pieces throughout the entire game, even before we scored both goals. I was like, whoa, we are really dangerous on these. And again, Julian had some great services. And I think he got more excited because he's like, oh my gosh, if I get these in the right spots, they are not marking up. And obviously, the first goal, Harvey, was a great example of just, it was
Great free kick.
a great decision by Harvey to kind of float into that back post. But at the end of the day, it was also, it was on Dallas that all of our free kicks were dangerous leading up to that. So to me, it's a little bit of how good we were in free kicks, and then it was really how Dallas right now. That's an area that they really need to address. Oh, they got some other areas too, but that's an area that they really have to address. And we'll probably get to a little bit of the tactics of Acosta in a second. But the other one is just I want to say about Markanovic, it's not one area of the box. It's not one area of like floating there. This is where I would say even the Guardian's an interesting article where I'm not sure we're as good without him on the field. Like he has become such a surprise. And it started, we had a preseason game in LA where he just snuck in the box, the ball deflected, he finds it and scores. So we had actually ended up losing the Galaxy. Played a lot of players, but you have this moment where you're like, wow, that kid just found a good spot in the box somehow. This is real now. He finds
Mm-hmm.
himself open, making near post runs, making far post runs, making late runs. This is a kid who really, really understands not only how to find space in the box, but how to attack it and use it in a way that I have not seen a Minnesota United player in a long time be able to do.
So then question is, what do you do at that left wing back spot? As you said, feels like, especially on set pieces, this team's far more dangerous with him on the field. And we saw how important Josef Rosales was to this team at that left wing back spot last year, where it felt like at times he was one of the better left backs in the league. But you can't have two guys playing the same position. You can certainly slot and move Rosales around into the midfield where you might need help depth wise, but you can't really. Can you take Rosales off? I mean, he was so important to this team last year. That's up and downs this year, but with how important Marcanic's been, you can't really take him off the field at that point in the season either right now. It's a tricky situation for Eric Ramsey at that spot.
Yeah, it's good problems to have, though. I think again, where we are now and where we need to go to really compete to win the West and make a run in the MLS, the team has to get better every day, every week. They have to become even more of a team, even more committed. And that's not 11 guys. That's 32 guys that train every day. And I think it's more important that you've got guys who are pushing each other to play in multiple positions. And let's be honest, you mentioned it, Joe Shiraz last year. I mean, I love Joe, but he's not been great this year. I mean, the goals and assists have dried up.
Yeah.
He now needs to kind of take a deep breath and say, okay, whenever my moment is, whether I play wingback or center midfield, I have to make sure that every little moment of the game, I'm contributing to helping the team win defensively, offensively. He has been quite himself, and I actually think a response by him is going to happen because I think he's a hungry, young, gritty kid. But that'll only make both those guys play harder and better, hopefully. And if they don't, they probably aren't at the right club because, we want that competition for guys to compete. And really, that's the only way we're going to win in this league is by the group getting better and being the best version of themselves.
Yeah. It's been fun to see the development there. I don't think especially speaking for myself, when I saw the acquisition of Anthony Marcanic come in last year, I was like, okay, that's a nice depth piece. It's going to be fun to see that as a depth piece. But then he's really blossomed into this absolute must start every week because of how good he is, and he's become defensively and in the offensive set pieces. He's been really key to this team's set pieces this season. That's been fun to see.
Jonathan, you just said it though. It starts with defense.
Yeah,
like he can't make it unless he commits to defending well against some of the best, fastest wingbacks in the league or wingers. And then the offense comes after that. And where I think the surprise is the offense isn't coming through the run of play. It's coming through the set pieces, which lines up great with what you just mentioned. Amazing article in The Guardian about how we take every set piece in a way that puts stress and pressure. And it's not just the first phase of it, it's the second and third. And that's where he's so good.
You mentioned Acosta, and we're still on the Dallas match. I texted this to a buddy during the match, and especially in the first half, it really felt like, I don't like criticizing body language too much, but it just felt like Dallas were an all-time bad body language team at that point in the first half. Minnesota were outplaying them pretty handily in the first half, and it just didn't feel like Dallas had much of a fight in that first half. Second half, a little bit differently, obviously. They came around, and Lucho Acosta started being a little bit more of a presence, but it just didn't feel like Dallas were in this one from the get-go until later on in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, I think, he is an MVP player. This guy is unbelievable. He's had amazing years in the league, but he's also had dips where, teams that he's been at after a couple of years, doesn't seem like he's always committed to the group kind of effort that's needed to kind of make sure you win consistently. And, he's had a year or two where he does it, and then he's had a year or two sometimes where he kind of falls off in terms of that commitment. And just looking at that game, losing the ball cheaply in spots where Dallas built up and they have numbers around and allowing us to counterattack really hurts a team. We don't always realize how important sometimes decision-making is at the final play of maybe you're not going to score, but how you finish a playoff offensively massively affects how the other team can go forward or things open up. And I thought throughout the game, particularly in that first half, he just, really kind of, I don't want to say let his team down, but his decision-making and quality really not only hurt them for that finish that playoff, but it hurt them when you lose the ball in a way that we can get our numbers forward. Now they have to sit back and they have to think about, well, what can we do? And then you have some guys that aren't excited to go forward just because if they lose the ball in bad spots, they look bad now as, let's say, like an outside back. So long story short, I thought they had a better defensive identity when they came and played us in Minnesota. Ironically, he wasn't on the field. So I think Eric Quill, a former teammate of mine, has done a great job of trying to navigate where that identity of the team going, but they're not there yet. I mean, obviously, this is a great league where they could even get there this year, but certainly, exposes that they're a team that still needs to figure out their own identity, both offensively and defensively.
Yeah, for sure. They've had their ups and downs. They've had a lot of changes in the offseason, so it's been a lot of work for Eric Quill to kind of sift through over the last couple months, and they are right in the thick of things in the Western Conference. Anything else from you on this match before we move on to the quarterfinal against Chicago?
Uh, no, I mean, I think the biggest thing that we'd say is that it was a really important second half to not have that game tied because we played so well
Yeah.
against the Red Bulls and we gave up the late goal and there was a little bitter taste about, just how are we going to see the game out. And again, I thought this game, I was very confident based on the fact that we weren't just defending deep, we were actually creating chances and moving the ball forward. And even late in that Dallas game, if you really think about it, they really didn't have a lot of chances after they scored late. So for me, it was important for the group to remind themselves that it's tough to get points in the road, and it's nice to get 1 point, but it's really nice when you deserve the 3 points and you step off the field with 3 points. And it sets up a great matchup, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit this weekend about how we can really push ourselves up the West.
Hey students, need a study break? If you got a .edu email address, we've got deals for you. Sign up for our student deals program to be notified of ticket offerings as low as $20 for various Minnesota United home games. Visit MNUFC.com to learn more. For sure. Now, moving on, Tuesday night at Allianz Field, Minnesota United taking on the Chicago Fire, a Fire side that have been really excellent away from Soldier Field. So they brought that in. Each team making a number of changes after coming off of weekend games, and Minnesota United going down early after seeing
Great.
Chicago go down a man in the 25th minute off an Omar Gonzalez kind of just left hook on Julian Gressel's chin there. Will Trapp unfortunately giving away the penalty and Brian Gutierrez converting. Loons then up a man, down a goal with a ton of possession. It's felt like at times when people talk about this team from the outside, that's kind of one of their kryptonites that they point to is this team on the ball with a lot of possession against a team bunkering down. Can they find a way to break a team down? They struggled in the first half, but in the second half, substitutions immediately making an impact. Robin Lod getting on the end of a cross from Marcanic and converting on the goal to make it 1-1 just seconds into the second half. And from there on, Loons were finding bits of possession in good spots and find a way in extra time, thanks to goals from Kelvin Yeboah in the 95th and 120th minute to get a 3-1 win and move on to the U.S. Open Cup semifinals. Your thoughts on this match and everything you saw against the Loons or from the Loons against Chicago?
Oh, Open Cups are hard games to navigate. They potentially, like this one was 120 minutes of soccer. Obviously, actually, our opponent this weekend played 120 minutes of soccer, was on the bad end of the result against Austin and PKs. So I couldn't be prouder of the club. This is a great run. I mean, how can you not be so excited about 2 games away at home from winning a trophy? And to show the resiliency of, yeah, it wasn't easy. It was a weird game. It was weird that the red card happened and they get the goal right after, and now you're really tested about how you're going to break a team down. And it has been one of our areas where, yeah, it's hard. But I really liked how we scored early in the second half and how that built into now that, again, I think this team has another gear offensively. And I think we have another gear of how we can break teams down, offensive patterns and create chances. So it was just, to me, a really special night. This is a special run. I'm really excited about the semifinal matchup and about Minnesotans be excited about. It reminded me of the 2019 where we had that Portland game where, this is special now. This is real. And, we're 2 games away from a major trophy.
I'm looking forward to that semifinal coming up in September. We'll see about the date, but we know the opponent. We'll talk about that in a little bit. That goal from Robin Lod, off the boot, off his boot, off a pass from Marcanic, but the chip in from Perea into Marcanic, who made a really nice run to that end line. That was some really gorgeous soccer to watch on that goal.
Yeah, it was. And it was going to take us really, breaking some lines and really, kind of punishing them a little bit in terms of a lot of possession, but now you had to have some possession with purpose and some penetrating passes. And I just love the tempo of it was outstanding. And, again, Robin had a nice commitment to realize that was going to happen. And that's why he got to the post. And great run by Marcanic. And again, he's been contributing goals and assists every game, which has been outstanding for the team.
Yeah, I think it's 6 goals and then 2 assists across all competitions for him this season. He has been a lightning rod for this team, and he's fun to watch. Kelvin Yeboah getting on the score sheet. Some important goals for him. That run at the end of the match, 120 minutes in. I know he didn't play the entirety of the match, but still, that late into a match, that 70-yard sprint up the field ended up drawing the penalty late on. What a run by him. What a great show of desire by him to not let Chicago score late on to force penalties and essentially score the dagger of a goal in the 120th minute to put this one away for good for good.
Yeah, it was exciting. Like I said, 2 goals when you come on, and the game-winning goal plus the kind of goal that seals the semifinal berth. Really good. Like I said, he's it's been a good. I thought he was looked very sharp against Dallas, so there's some nice momentum going for him right now. And I thought that run just showed his athleticism, his cleverness, the fact that he can have that kind of breakaway speed. I remember maybe the game against St. Louis last year away where I was like, whoa, there is some serious breakaway speed running with the ball. And it was good for him to show that off. And like I said, his ability, it was clever to draw the penalty kick because he kind of maybe that last touch was a little bit wayward to his left. And he was like, I could try to score this or I could kind of, collect the physicality of the foul. And, he decided to go for the PK and really good. Like, again, I don't have a lot to say, John. It was just, to me, it was a weird game, but a great game, but a wild game. And I'm like, yeah, that's what Open Cup soccer
Oh, yeah.
is. And it doesn't surprise me that it went to 120 minutes either, because that's usually how it works as well.
Yeah, it was a really, really fun match to watch. All credit out to Chicago Fire goalkeeper Chris Brady. He put on a performance in net, keeping the Fire in that as long as he did. Eventually succumbing to those 2 goals by Kelvin Yeboah in extra time. But man, he was a wall in front of that goal all night long. That was impressive to watch. But now the Loons move on to the Open Cup semifinals. They'll host Austin FC coming up in September. It'll be an interesting match coming up in September. Minnesota already played Austin twice, a 3-0 win down in Austin, and 1-1 draw here in Minnesota. That one's going to be exciting. Semifinal with the chance to host the final on the line coming up in October. I cannot wait for that one because I love the U.S. Open Cup, and just going on these runs is really fun to watch, man.
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously, there's some nice history of I was spent some time over the weekend with my dad, who talked about the run that the team had in 2005, 6-ish. That was awesome. Got to the semifinals. I think they downed 2 or 3, I think 3 MLS teams in their run. Obviously, when I was coaching, we had some nice fun runs where we downed some MLS teams to get to the quarters. And I think we had like a 21 unbeaten match streak at the time. So there's some nice history about Minnesota making some great runs in the Open Cup prior to MLS. And then we bring up the 2019 run where, that was a great run. We had a good team, home playoff game. This feels exciting. I mean, this feels like something that it's tough. You want to talk about it, but you don't. But at the end of the day, how can we not? Both home games are in Minnesota. Everything is there. I think it's a good Austin team, but it's not amazing. Certainly, either Philly or Nashville feel like they're going to be the favorite on the other side. So if we get to the final, it will be probably a really tough game. Which you want. You don't want to make it easy to win a championship. So to me, got to take one game at a time now with Austin, but it feels really, really special right now. And I think every Minnesota fan should be excited. And I encourage everybody to spread the word. We got to fill that stadium for this game because it's always a little bit harder to fill the Open Cup games. Obviously, MLS doesn't kind of run that entity. It's U.S. Soccer. They don't always put the same kind of marketing effort. So we got to get people out. We got to make sure that Minnesota shows proud and said, hey, we're excited about potentially winning a championship.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about it is that it's in September. We have to wait 2 months to get there until that semifinal. So the anticipation will be growing until then. Looking forward to that one. But as you said, on the other side of the bracket, a couple of really, really good teams. Nashville going through after coming back from a 2-goal deficit on Wednesday night to just hammer DC United 5-2. That ended Troy Lesesne's time as the head coach of DC United. They've got a new manager there. The game between the Red Bulls and Philly postponed due to torrential rain. I don't know if you saw the video that CBS Sports popped up on the screen at halftime of the Nashville DC United game, but they popped into the stadium in Philadelphia and it was just a lake at that point. So there was just water everywhere. Obviously that game wouldn't be played. That's going to be played and made up in, I think, August is what I saw. So either way, whoever comes out of the Eastern side is going to be a very tough opponent for the Loons or Austin in the final. It's going to be a really fun tournament to watch. Now, on to the game at hand this weekend. Minnesota, San Jose. San Jose, one of the top goal scoring teams in the league. We saw them way back at the beginning of the season. A 1-0 win for the Loons back in March in the third week of the season. So it's been a while. San Jose has developed under Bruce Arena into one of the more exciting attacking teams. They get forward on you very quickly with Chicho Arango, Joseph Martinez. Christian Espinoza has been otherworldly good once again for them this season. 8 assists on the season for him, 4 goals, I believe, as well for him. Goal scoring, goal contributing wise for him. What are the big takeaways and big notes ahead of this match between the Loons and Quakes this weekend on Saturday?
Yeah, I think my brain starts with both played Tuesday, both played 120 minutes, both kind of had rotated lineups, but there is a 4 days rest is better than 3. So I think the fatigue is not going to be huge, but it's one to keep an eye on. It's one to keep an eye on because now the tactics become really important. Eric's decision about what he wants to do and the players he wants to play, Bruce as well. I do love the matchup of you have a young, kind of historically iconic, I'm sorry, you have a young coach for the Loons, and you have one of our more kind of significant American coaches in the history of U.S. soccer. So you've got a really good spectrum of 70s and 30s going on. I'm excited to see it. It's going to be a good matchup. Obviously, you could say it's offense versus defense. It's definitely more complex than that if you really think about it. But I think there is some elements to that are true. We tend to do really well if we can stop a team's offense. They tend to open up, and we can really dominate a game. So I think for us, the keys of the game are going to be for us to kind of deal with their offense. And I think we should have a really good night going forward ourselves.
Yeah, this sets up for a really interesting match between these two teams, as you said, kind of offense versus defense to make it simple. But there's obviously more to it than that. But the offense for San Jose has been incredible this year. What's it, 44 goals or something like that through their matches so far? One of the highest scoring teams in the league, and expected goals is right up there with them as well. They are performing just as they would expect to be performing. Chicho Arango, 10 goals in the season, though he hasn't really had a whole lot of luck against the Loons in his past couple games against Minnesota United, going back to his Real Salt Lake days. What do the Loons do so well against Arango that kind of shuts down one of the more elite goal scorers in this league?
Yeah, I just think, the back three for him is really tough, especially if he ends up being 1v3 with our big trees back there. I don't know what it is. I think Michael Boxall tends to really embrace playing against them. He's like, I really want to make sure that you don't find me space, see me space. And it's been a little interesting because obviously we had in the playoffs as well. So I think there's some bad blood there that gets our defenders excited to play against them. And they've done really well. Ultimately, like, again, as much as I say that, you can't go to sleep on him because he is outstanding in the air for not a big guy. He will always be looking, trying to find space and ways to score. So every time we play against him, even if we've done well in the past, we have to make sure we're hungry to move with him, run in the box. He does like to kind of float to that far post, and he's very good in the air. He's got very good timing. But I do think he's one of those players that if you can take him out of his rhythm and be honest defensively,
Mm-hmm.
he sometimes tends to disappear in games.
Yeah, for sure. And we saw that in the playoffs where the first game took him out of that game, and the second game he didn't even start. He was a second half substitute in that match in the playoffs for Real Salt Lake last year. So the Loons have done pretty well against Chicho Arango of late. Christian Espinoza, this guy just continues to impress year in and year out for San Jose. He's been an excellent signing for them. Double-digit assists by the league standard of this stat. This season, he's up to 11, I believe, but primary assists, he's at 8. Once again, nearing double digits in that figure. Espinoza continuing to be really dynamic, really excellent provider of the ball. How do the Loons shut him down this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, he is one of my favorite players to watch in the league.
Mm-hmm.
That whistle blows and he says, let's start running. Let's start just battling. Let's start getting up and down that wing and getting crossed.
We saw the emotion from him late in the Open Cup game.
Yes.
On Tuesday night.
He just leaves it all on the field. And I can't say enough about how much I respect a player that is that hungry game in and game out to kind of just show the running. So for me though, he does get caught if you have to come inside and show a little more creativity. His left foot isn't quite as strong as his right. So there's some tactical things about where you want to push him to different spaces on the field and how you want to limit his space. So I think it's going to be really important that we're just hungry to not allow him to have that free running. which is easier said than done when there's 90 minutes of soccer plus stoppage time where he just keeps running. And once the space opens up, he's into it and he wants to go. So, really fun one to watch, really hard one to deal with. But you're right. I think that's where their offense comes through. A lot of their dangerous moments come from him breaking space down and getting crosses in.
They will not defensively on the defensive side of the ball. They won't have Dawan Jones, who will be out due to, I believe, a red card he got in the last match. So that's a big loss for them. It'll be interesting to see how they manage without that. Is this one more likely to be a shootout or a defensive battle? It feels like shootout's the easy answer here, but we saw 1-0 win last time. This thing got a little bit, it was a little bit open, but neither team really found a way to separate themselves too much the last time. Which one is this more likely to be?
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on the weather tomorrow night. I think it depends on guys actually once the game starts, probably more subconsciously knowing where their fatigue level is based on 120 minutes of soccer on Tuesday. And that could mean wide open or that could be really, really tight. I'm not sure, but my gut says there's goals in this game. My feeling right now, it feels like, I obviously I think San Jose is going to try to navigate how do they not get swept. I think I talk about that all the time. This is
Yeah.
a great opportunity for us to get 6 points off a Western Conference team. I think we're going to be excited and hungry to do that. I think San Jose is probably going to tactically be a little bit more cautious and maybe not as wide open as they usually are, knowing that we are so tight defensively and then we really hurt teams going forward. So, and I think really for us, it's San Jose, that first 15 minutes in San Jose was outstanding. So for us, if we can get through really being honest defensively, I think they tend to run out of ideas, and I think it'll be a really good day offensively for us if we are committed to that structure and shape defensively.
When you look at San Jose's season, seventh place in the Western Conference, are you surprised that they are seventh? Should they be higher? Should they be lower? I mean, if there was an award for busiest team in the offseason, it was certainly San Jose with what they did this offseason with Bruce Arena. Are you surprised with where they're at, or is this about where you expected San Jose to be after 20 or after 21 weeks of the season?
Well, I think people are probably given that it's been a challenge for them to really show their identity the last couple of years. I think there's probably on the way up in terms of the excitement of what they are, and in every game they feel like they have a chance to win, particularly because of how good they are offensively. I mean, knowing Bruce pretty well, I'm sure he expects better defensive performances and wants the team to have a little bit more of a balanced identity. And I think that's probably the goal of them, a little bit different than us, where we're trying to figure out a balance of our identity in terms of how we go forward and create chances. I think for them now, it's to kind of combine that balance of how do they kind of continue to have their offensive expected goals while they still kind of shore up how they're going to not give up goals and leak. So I think they're better than expected, probably given where the West is. But again, we're in that middle part of the summer now where teams really need to kind of shore what their identity is to show that they want to make the playoffs and or push to the top of the West.
Yeah, for sure. This isn't the only California clash that we'll see over the next week at Allianz Field coming up Wednesday. A quick turnaround, a game before we talk next on this podcast. Minnesota hosting LAFC Wednesday night at Allianz Field. 7:30 kickoffs for both of these matches. 7 p.m. pre-match show with Dan Terrar and myself on 1500 ESPN. This one sets up to be an interesting one as well. Manny, LAFC coming to town. This is the team that the Loons saw all the way in the first week of the season, a 1-0 loss back then for the Loons to kick off the season. Both these teams have had very different seasons since that point. Obviously, Minnesota, we know what they've done. LAFC, they've had a couple of international runs for them, especially in the World Cup, excuse me. But they returned from that with a 3-0 win over an undermanned Colorado side who went down early to a red card. Is there going to be a Club World Cup drop for them, or probably not, because this is an LAFC team that at this point of the season looking to fight for their spot in the Western Conference, looking to battle back to the top of the Western Conference?
Yeah, I think you just said it. I think they're looking to battle back. I think it was an important win. I thought the Club World Cup, they dipped a little bit, but that's just the margins of that one tough loss in their second game. I think really hurt them from getting out of a somewhat tough group. There was a small chance that they could maybe have found a point and gotten through. So, or a win. Sorry, but I think it's a huge game for us. I think these two games are really, really important for different reasons. first of all, they're both at home. We got to win the games we're expected to win, which is this weekend. And then I probably would guess, the Vegas odds have us being slightly favored given how well we've played and given how kind of up and down LAFC's been. So to me, it's a massive 2 games to win. It just is so important that we, navigate two good teams in different ways with 2 big home games. And you're right, LAFC, I think they're on the way up in the West, but it's a big opportunity for us to show where we are and why we're ahead of them in the standings.
Denny Bawanga, 9 goals, 4 assists on the season. Elsewhere, they haven't really gotten a whole lot of goals from basically one other person. It's been goals up and down the roster. 4 goals for Ordaz, 3 for Martinez, 3 for Ebobisi. Giroud's gone. He had 3. So that experiment didn't really work out for Giroud. He's back in France now. Mark Delgado, though, in the midfield, switching over from LA Galaxy to LAFC. He's proven a pretty vital find for them in the offseason in that midfield role after moving on from some of their more veteran players that they had in the midfield for the past couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's a great player. He's had a great career. I would say that's been a weak spot is their midfield in general, both offensively and defensively. It doesn't seem like they're always committed to win battles to go forward, and they haven't been quite as hungry as I remember this press and repressing that we used to play, which used to be really suffocating. So again, I think the interesting thing about them is with Giroud now leaving, it feels like they'll take a deep breath and recalibrate what their identity is as a team. Certainly right now it's like everything with Bwanga, which in some ways is
they
really
rely a lot on Bwanga.
Yeah, because he is amazing. But in some ways, it's also like if they don't have a plan B, it's a little bit easier to kind of deal with them offensively because it is just Bwanga or nothing. So again, I'm intrigued by the matchup because they've got a lot of good players, and they've certainly said the Giroud thing didn't work out. For whatever reason, on paper it seemed like it should, it just didn't, and it's almost like a coaching change now. Where does this allow them to be a little bit more free in terms of their building an identity that they want to compete in this league? Whereas it felt like every week they're trying to figure out how to get Giroud involved in terms of them competing in the West.
They made that decision. It felt like pretty quick, considering the amount of investment they put into that signing and bringing him in. They made the decision and came to that realization pretty quick that wasn't going to work for them. And it's better just to move on than continue to try and make it work, no matter who the manager was at the time. Defensively for them, they've allowed the same amount of goals as Minnesota, 24 on the season. So defensively, they've been pretty decent this year. This is going to be an interesting one at Allianz Field on Wednesday. Coming up on Wednesday, they sit, I'm pulling up the standings again. They sit just one place above the Earthquakes right now, a couple points behind the Loons. They've been a little bit surprising that they're so far, I guess, not so far down the Western Conference, but they're not at the top of the Western Conference battling for one of those spots like San Diego, Vancouver, and Minnesota are.
Yeah, I mean, you've just said it. They've given up 24 goals, but they have Olivier Giroud for a couple of years, and he's barely scored. So again, there's some issues that are bigger than just the forward and number 9 spot. It's certainly, I think their midfield engine to me has dropped a level over the last couple of years. So they're in somewhat of a rebuild mode, but they're again a team that has a good base and they have some quality players. So I'm sure this transfer window now with Giroud being freed up, they'll be really keen to kind of build up a new identity.
And moving on from Giroud, moving on from Under, who I know is just on what a 6-month loan or whatever that was. So they've got 2 designated player spots. We know LAFC are very much wanting to use those designated player spots as they have been over the past several years. So it'll be interesting to see what they do this coming off season. Manny, I'm looking forward to both of these California clashes coming up at Allianz Field at the weekend. This is going to be, or over the next week. This is going to be really fun, and can't wait to review those coming up next week and then preview what's next for Minnesota United.
It's just exciting. I mean, again, we talk about Allianz Field, we talk about high-level soccer. It is surreal that we have this type of level of games coming to the Twin Cities and at impactful times of the year in terms of just the momentum of the club based off of getting to the semifinals of the U.S. Open Cup and a real clear pathway for a trophy. The team playing one of the better teams in the entire league in terms of how we're playing and our style and level. And certainly 2 Western Conference foes that, again, we've got to get points out of these games if we want to really be serious about winning the West, which I think the group is. I think it's a really exciting week, and I think for the fans, it's cool that we know what type of soccer's coming, and they get to experience it. I think it's gonna be a great week of soccer in Minnesota.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is going to be really fun to watch and present over on the radio side. Join Dan Terrar and myself starting at 7 p.m. for both of those nights, Saturday and Wednesday. Minnesota United hosting San Jose Earthquakes on Saturday, and then LAFC on Wednesday, followed up by Portland next Saturday. And we'll preview that game coming up next week here on the podcast. So if you want to go watch the most aggressive set piece team in the world, it's at Allianz Field this weekend. Looking forward to it, Manny. We'll talk to you then. Thanks to the production staff of Grace Dearson, Evan Entler, and Kyle Hayward for putting this on every week. And Loons fans, we'll talk to you right back here next week.